Me, 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 Dorogika, e. Me, 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 Dorogika, e. Me, 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 me,
Hello, you are watching InterTrash Live with me, Ollie Pitt. Hello, welcome along. This is the first time you've joined. Why? What have you been doing? You should have joined us a long time ago. I'm very bright here. I'm very, very bright. Anyway, it's lovely to have you along. Happy Friday. It's a beautiful day outside. That's probably why I'm bloody bright. Like a goddamn... There we go. That's a little bit better, isn't it? Yeah, grab yourself a coffee, sit down, because we've got a really, really interesting chat for you today. I'm very, very excited about this one. Been talking about it for quite a while, but then we had to push it back and move it around, because he's just a very busy man. That's just kind of how it works. I'm going to introduce to you my favourite man of the moment. It's Ade Bamgbala. Hey, Ade! Oh, you're weird.
Hey.
You're all weird.
Am I all weird?
You're all weird.
Let's
get rid of that.
Or is that you?
Here he is. He's here. There he is. You can see him. Hey, man, how are you?
I'm good. The man of the moment. I appreciate that. Really do.
Well, you're man of my moment, my very own little personal moment, which I enjoy. It's great.
I'll take that. That's the only moment that counts. I'm good though. Thanks for having me. Appreciate being on this very unique concept talk show into trash.
Yeah, I'm glad you've called it a concept, because it's very much a work in progress. I describe it as basically this sort of embryotic idea that I've decided to put out anyway. So it's not safe for it to leave the womb, but it has. Yeah. So it's in an incubator. And it's basically that it's sort of sitting in there. It's very delicate, and it could die at any minute. So that's kind of the stage we're at. So thanks for coming along. How's lockdown been for you? How are you?
It's been good. Right? I think fundamentally as a freelancer and someone who's, I guess, who's their own business owner, not a lot has changed apart from the purse strings of others. But my day to day, absolutely the same, if that makes sense. I mean, you know, being a creative yourself. Yeah.
Well, my day-to-day has been the same, but I've definitely sort of... The phone's ringing a bit less. I do a lot in radio, and it's kind of... I do a lot of cover, so people aren't going on holiday. So I'm like, can you just fuck off to Benidorm so I can go and... take your job for a few weeks, but they're not having any of it. They're not doing it.
I hear that. Ollie, I'm slightly off the frame. I don't know if that's just me or is that for everyone.
Hang on. Look, let me move you. Look.
Move me ever so slightly.
So,
there we are.
Do you know what?
Centered.
Me and Ade used to go to school together. We're going to talk about this a bit later on. But meticulous with his looks as always. First thing, he's like, I'm not even in frame yet, mate. Can you sort it out?
Sorry.
Well, look, let's get started. I wanted to talk to you about... Well, you're a fellow podcaster, basically. And actually, it's quite odd. It's quite a nice story, this, because we hadn't seen each other for a very, very long time. We went to school together. We went to senior school together. And then through a mutual friend of ours, Matt Hill, who is a podcast producer, we both sort of figured out... I was like, oh, fuck, I know Ade. We used to go to school with him. He does podcasts as well. Shit. And then we got in touch, and then we met up and we had a drink, and then last year we met each other at the British Podcast Awards, and we had that was a great night, actually. I had a really good time. I remember you getting slightly shit-faced and having a word with the head of content for Spotify, but that was quite fun. That's another story. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, sounds like me.
But the one thing that we've never really spoke about, because we always would talk about school and all that kind of stuff, is actually what we're doing in any kind of detail. Because, of course, you do... a podcast called Blacticulate, which is actually more than that. So, layman's terms to me, explain it to me. What is Blacticulate?
Okay, great question. I mean, I think I'll start first and foremost with the name. The name is an amalgamation of 3 words, which is black, surprise, action, and articulate. And the reason why I articulate is because I was always told I was articulate, which used to be a chip on my shoulder or bugbear. But then I doubled down and I actually armoured myself with it. So Blacticulate is an amalgamation of those 3 words. And what do we do? Fundamentally, we podcast produce, so podcast productions, and we also offer workshops and talks, skill-related and career-related workshops and talks for students and those particularly within the underrepresented and underserved communities. Us.
And how long have you been doing that then?
In truth, 2018, where I could officially say that that's my full-time profession. Prior to that, I've always been working in digital marketing. Used to work for Google, used to work for Pan African magazine, whose clients was the United Nations. And prior to that, used to work for very small independent publications.
And how does it work then? So if people want to access your workshops and those kinds of things, how are you reaching out? How are you getting to the right people to make sure that they can take part?
Well, actually, I think I've been privileged or fortunate enough that people will reach out to me rather than me reaching out to them. So, I mean, if you just literally go on my website, blacticulate.com, and that's not with a K, but I'm sure I'll give you the details and potentially we can.
I can write it in the comments. I can actually do this. Blacticulate.com. I'm pretty sure I've done that right.
Yes. Let's see the comments.
Can you see that? Blacticulate. Yeah, it's all right.
Just about.
So you can click on that link and access it. What gave you the idea to do it as well? Because I'm trying to work out how they sort of even would work as a business, but I feel like it wasn't a money-making idea. I feel like it was something. It feels like a passion project more than anything. So where was the idea from?
Yeah, I mean, in truth, fundamentally, whilst I was working for this independent publication house, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts, but specifically lifestyle podcasts. So the likes of Tim Ferriss, etc. And I was like, why don't I have any that's specific to UK and within? Let's not be around the bush within my community. And I have phenomenal people within my network. So for me, it was like, well, actually, I'm going to start getting their stories a la Tim Ferriss-esque. So that's how Blacticulate started. This was in 2015. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with Renee Richardson. And if you're not, you should check her out. She's a powerhouse. At that time, she was working for Acast. I think she was like employee number 3 in the UK. She got caught wind through mutual friends that I was looking to start a podcast. She got in touch with me, and Bob's your uncle. Next thing you know, we're putting that out there. So you're absolutely right, it was a passion project. But then I started to get a little bit jaded with working not only at the publication company, but when I moved on to work on behalf of Google. And I was like, well, people know me, quote unquote, in the community as someone who produces podcasts. So University of Arts London at the time, I did a project for them on behalf of Google for them, and they were trying to set up their own podcast. And they caught wind that I did that. Next thing you know, I'm doing their podcast for them. So I'm like, oh shit, this can be a business. It gives me a lot more pleasure and joy, so fuck it. Can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear as much as you want. It's the fucking internet. Come on.
Okay, I was going to say, whoops, I just let an F-bomb just fly out there.
I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you. If you want to swear, you can swear away.
Okay, cool, but I won't be too much. And yeah, so next thing I know is that I'm fundamentally being paid to produce podcasts. And then the workshops... Okay, sorry.
No. So I was just going to ask. So, what, like, with the podcast front, then you're producing other people's podcasts? Are they coming to you with ideas, or are you pitching ideas elsewhere?
I mean, at the moment, they're not necessarily as creative. So they're not your long form narrative. They're actually just basically career related interviews. So fundamentally, it's sit down, find out how you do what you do, and then we chop it up, studio based, happy days.
It sounds good, man. It sounds really good. And you were just about to go on to the workshop stuff. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, the workshop again is just a natural thing of what I've been doing. Literally, I'm just, I guess, for lack of a better word, I'm a natural born teacher and tutor. So I was one of the most sought after trainers when it came down to this Google project, and I taught the trainers how to train. And so just as a byproduct, I was like, well, I can do that for myself, considering I pretty much wrote the content and I, had the training onboarding process. So I was like, yeah, let me do that. So that's, again, something that was just another business and revenue stream. And
Are you running, how regularly are you running those? Are they quite sort of, I suppose at the moment you can't, right? Or have you gone online with these things?
I mean, you're absolutely right. COVID was a bitch. Yeah, so I have done a couple of consultancy, or rather training, shall I say, online. So I work with, certainly when it comes down to training, I work with charities mainly. The most recent one I did was actually last week, Wednesday, for this charity called Accumulate that deal with homelessness and which is creativity, art and creatives for the homeless. So I was just teaching them on how basically to run and put together podcasts.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I bet. Do you focus more? I mean, I don't know, but like that. I mean, that sounds like an amazing cause, and also what you're doing sounds like it's, you know, we're talking about it as a passion project. You're doing it because you want to make a difference with your podcasting and the podcasts that you produce. Do you focus specifically on almost activism type stuff? So like, I want to do something about homelessness. I want to help these people. I want to help this community or whatever. Or are you like, oh no, one day I want to do one about bums? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm happy to do is things that are very much of a social cause and activism. Just because I don't mind spending the extra hours, normally knowing that it's worthwhile. But if someone pays me a ludicrous amount of money to, you know, do something about bums, yeah, I'm sure I'd relish the research. I definitely would relish that. But yeah, at the moment,
I didn't mean to be so flippant about it, but I just wonder as well, like with. I want to think of the right phrasing. I think socially conscious is probably the right one. I was going to say sort of worthy, but that feels like an insult. But podcasts like that, I mean, in terms of like when I listen to a podcast, a lot of the time I want to do it because I want to learn stuff. I want to be entertained to a degree as well. But it's also there's a bit of escapism there. But with stuff the way you're sort of addressing serious topics like homelessness or whatever it might be, do you struggle to get listeners? Is it difficult to get listeners to listen to that kind of content, or actually are you finding, they love it?
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is a lot of the topics in which that do have social slant, you only find that you're not preaching to the choir per se, but you are those who are within that community anyway, and those who might then finally, due to, I don't know, some circumstance of their own, want to now start having an understanding about said community, which I'm sure we're going to touch upon.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, basically, it's just almost like Seth Godin says, purple cow. You start finding your tribe. This has never been a commercial, like, you know, trying to just get listeners and people switch off. It always, as you right to say, has some social cause attached to it that hopefully at the end we can all be better for.
Yeah. But it is interesting because trying to get the people that you want to change their minds to listen to that kind of stuff and engage with it is a battle you can never win, isn't it? Or is it?
No. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's one of those you can take a horse to water, right? But you can't force it to drink.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, you have to have soldiers, right, around. You might not be the best messenger, but there will be someone who is. And if they come to you because they know that they want to spread a message, then that's your part done. You can't force anyone else, in my personal opinion.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're sort of going through a time at the moment where the message and the messaging around race in particular feels like it's everywhere on social media anyway. And I you know, every day I go onto whatever platform it might be, and I will see something around Black Lives Matter, or I'll see something that's kind of... Do you know what? Actually, on Reddit, I've seen some really fucking abhorrent videos, like really horrible, and it'll be like somebody just a shopkeeper getting racially abused because he's asking somebody to wear a mask in Texas or whatever. But with that exposure of it, with that sort of like... You know, racism's always been there, but do you think that social media has exposed it in a way that's a good thing? So it feels like it's everywhere at the moment. It feels like it's everywhere, but actually the message is kind of getting out, and it means that maybe those people that wouldn't necessarily actively engage with it, you know, wouldn't go on a Black Lives Matter march or whatever, are actually like, oh, fuck, this is actually a real problem. So do you think social media has actually been a blessing in disguise, or has it been a bad thing for this?
I mean, it depends on who you're speaking to, right? And I guess because you are speaking to me, do I want to be constantly reminded or shown, you know, black and brown people being humiliated, dehumanized and murdered? No, because it's traumatic. But those who blatantly have had the privilege of being able to basically not engage and turn a blind eye to it, well, now it's in your, literally, as you said, Ollie, rightfully so, when you've gone on social media, you've seen it literally, in your face, which has now made you uncomfortable, whereby there's conversations like we're having right now to educate. So that is the benefit, the positive aspect, because, things you can't change systems, right, or structures without all parties involved being complicit in that. So we've been trying, but we've often been ignored because it was easy enough to do that. But now that it's almost, you can't turn a blind eye to it, like I mentioned, now the change hopefully will start. Well, hopefully we'll see. We'll see. I think time in this will tell. This is where history in the making, right?
I hope so. I think it's interesting because it's certainly over the last few years I've sort of become way more aware, particularly of my own privilege and racism in general. And it's interesting in particular to talk to you about it because we went to the same school. And I know that then I wasn't aware of that. I would never have thought, not in that way anyway. So I never thought when we were at school, I thought, oh, I don't know, Ade's different and he'll have a different experience to me at school because of the colour of his skin. That never entered my mind. But you must have done. Did you? We've never spoken about this. Like, it was exactly the same school. We had exactly the same education at that school. Not saying before or afterwards, but was your experience different? And if so, how was it different?
Yeah, 100%, of course. I mean, there's a difference between pretending that there isn't difference, right, and therefore erasing someone's experience, or saying or noting there is difference and then being accommodating too. Does that make sense?
Explain it a bit more.
So, I'm a black man, and you can see I'm a black man. But what does that mean to you? Do you know?
Right.
But for you to say, oh, I don't see you as a black man, means that you're totally disregarding my experience as a black man. And the question is, therefore, why are you doing that? Is it because, I don't know, you might have your own particular personal motivations? I have no idea. But that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that if I know you're a white man, which you are, Ollie, I don't think you're a white man, therefore X, Y, Z. I just know you're a white man. And I'm like, okay, he's a white man, bring him in and let me find out more about his experiences, if he's willing to share. That's what I'm trying to say. The difference is, as in, I won't have a prejudice based off on, not being educated or not having personal experience with you, but just assuming you are that, when actually, no, it's more about, oh, you are a white man, but what does that mean? Let me find out more through my own experience and interactions with you. That's what I mean by that. Now, to go back to your question about the experience at school, fuck me. Again, excuse my French.
You swear away.
God. I mean, in hindsight, probably one of the most toxic environments I was ever in. Let's not beat around the bush.
Serious? Our school?
100%. 100%. It was...
That's interesting.
It was, just for context for listeners or anyone who is on, right? We went to a school that was approximately around 800 boys. Right? All boys from the ages of 11, 12, all the way to 17, 18, right? So prepubescent, going through testosterone and puberty, all the way to going, out into university, etc. If that's what someone chooses to do. If you're talking about masculinity and toxic traits and this notion of, alpha maleness, of course it was horrible. And more specifically, the fact that 800 boys. How many of the black boys were there in our year? Do you recall, Ollie?
I could probably name them. I think it was yourself. We had Felix. We had Chuku. We had... Who else did we have in our year? It might have been just the three. Three of you, was it?
And then Felix left, didn't he?
Felix left in, sixth form, year 11.
Yeah,
just
after GCSEs. So it was me and Chuku. Now, how many boys in our year?
Oh, yeah. Well, 100 at least, I would say. Maybe, something like that.
Yeah, around 80, I'd say. Right? So look at the percentage. Now, when you're now talking about a school that's meant to develop you and really and truly They're trying to set you up for life, right? To acclimatize into a social environment so you can be a good citizen. If there's no one within the school, my peers that look like me and have the same experience coming from London, which we did, right? You know, we were boarding. The school itself was very homogenous, with all due respect, you know, white male predominantly. The area in which we were in, which was in Stourbridge, right? I mean, is it okay if I'm naming, like, literally
Yeah, you do it. Yeah,
to
yeah,
give
yeah.
the details? Okay, cool. Which was in Stourbridge. Again, that's what, a town of, I would say, not even 30,000 people.
Yeah, it's
If
quite a small town.
Yeah, very small town. No black people. If there was, rare. And there might be that one Chinese family, that one Indian family, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you want to see it, they were the ones that owned a Chinese takeaway or had an Indian takeaway, you know. Where does one's identity, especially when a school's been educating and trying to shape you to who you are, where does my black experience fit in?
Yeah, it's so true. Do you know what this is a really interesting conversation because right, this isn't me comparing, just to hasten to add, but I was from the southeast, right? And I went to that boarding school. And also, just to highlight, it was a boarding school, which meant that it's 24 hours a fucking day. So if you were one of those people at school and you didn't quite fit in for whatever reason, like, and it could literally be anything, it would you get picked on you, right? So I was from the southeast, and I remember going to that school for the first time. A lot of the kids there, I'd say the majority were from around the same kind of vicinity, like the West Midlands and that kind of area. There were people from out and about. And even I, little blonde, ginger weirdo, felt out of place because of where I was from. Right. And I can just imagine your experience is that 50 million fold, I would imagine, in that situation. Because it was set up as like it was almost like an Etonian kind of idea. It was quite elitist. It was that kind of feel. And I remember sitting down, you know, my dad was a builder, and I remember sitting down and one of the teachers saying, right, we're setting you up to be the CEOs of the future. And I was like, I don't want to be a fucking CEO. Like, what? You don't understand me at all. What's wrong with you? So, like, I can totally understand where you're coming from, but I just can't imagine what it would be like.
Yeah, I mean, what, do you want me to give you some anecdotal, like, stories, or?
Well, you can. I've got Peter Labib has been in touch. Do you remember Peter Labib?
I do remember.
He's messaged. He said he's asked, did you find racism more from peers or the institution of the school? And I'm just going to add, or both. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, institutionally, because fundamentally, I was almost... For me particularly, which is strange, I mean, I quote unquote rose up to the ranks of being deputy head boy of the school, if you recall. I was also sports captain, deputy head of the house, and that was contentious in of itself. In fact, I recall vividly, like, the previous prefects, in accordance to Alex Emme, who was the only one black boy who was in the year above us. He said when the announcement was made, the entire prefects went to the headmaster and said, what the fuck are you doing? There's no way he deserves to be, you know, blah, blah, blah. He's X, Y, Z. So there was already this sort of narrative that was shrouded. What? Yeah. That was shrouded around. Oh
my God.
That was shrouded around me. And therefore, regardless of what I did, I was almost shoehorned into that. Like, I just recall there was one specific incident, and I don't know whether you recall this, Ollie, but we came back. It was after GCSEs, and it was the first weekend back, right? And we all went on this outing or wherever we went. Like, it must have been to the valleys in Wales or something. And people just, you know, boys will be boys. People just, like, tearing up the tent and just being dickheads, right? And I recall vividly not doing that. Because I just recall vividly not doing that. But then, forget his name, he lined us all up, and then I must have caught eyes with him, and he just slated me. He goes, you Ada, you've come back, you think you're hot shit, you barely made it to sixth form, how dare you do this, that, and the other. And what was really, really fascinating about that experience, about him calling me out in front of everyone, wasn't my first time, and it wasn't going to be my last time. But I was actually looking at a brand new tutor who was the sports, who was the heads of sports. What was his name? It wasn't Foster, and I totally forget it because God, this is now 2 decades back, right?
Is this it? Yeah. Was it the Irish guy?
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
Yeah.
he was a, he took over Mr. Jones for the rugby like first 15. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he was brand new, and so when everyone's getting berated, I was just looking at him, and he was just looking at me, and then me not smiling, me not doing nothing, right? He must have then told Mr. Carpenter, that was his name. Mr. Carpenter was when I was berating everyone. He must have told Mr. Carpenter, you picked on him, but he didn't actually do anything. He didn't smile. He just was just normal. So Mr. Carpenter ended up apologizing to me, right? But he never apologized to me in front of everyone. And then just throughout that year, whenever there was any form of trouble talking in the class, allegedly it was always me. But it never was me because I was one of those boys, right? And I guess that's why I rose to those ranks, because I was one of those boys that actually just wanted to keep my head down and just do my work. I couldn't help but be good at sports because allegedly I was good at sports, even though I was okay. Actually, I tell a lie, I was actually really good at sports.
Hey man, come on, you're in the B team with rugby with me. Come on, you can't have been that good. Fucking hell.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's because I didn't train, did I? Because I didn't like being head coach. But then I was in the first 11 for football, so I used to play people off each other. It can't have been that good. How dare you?
but it was a mad.
I don't know if I answered your question. I felt like I just went off on one.
You kind of no. You have done. I think that it's those little examples of it that I would never and could never be aware of. I mean, you can feel a minor injustice if somebody does something and you get the blame for it, but all the fucking time must just get grinding, and then you start thinking, well, hang on, what is behind this? Why the hell do I keep getting targeted? Where's this reputation coming from? And if I was to ever experience that, it would likely be that reputation would be worthy because I would be a prick. Whereas with you, it just must be this constant gnawing feeling. Well, it's like, it must be to do with the colour of my skin. And I think that I don't know, I just can't imagine.
Partly, but also remember the fact that you also made us almost trying to do this Etonian sort of schooling and, be future CEOs. As a black man, having the audacity to actually aspire for that is problematic in of itself. And I can only say this due to experiences that have been in interviews, many interviews, where I've been told I was too ambitious. Do you know what I mean? That's why I didn't get the role. Or more to the point, and I think what was interesting, and we went to a school which was fundamentally suits at sixth form, right? And uniform base and ties and all of that. So doing a wins or not for us was second nature. But I do recall, again, post, our school days, when I'm in interviews, people actually commenting on how I dress well. Which in itself is like, that's got nothing to do with me trying to achieve or hopefully get my career on track. But it's these subtle things that make it really play on one's mind to go, why is that even something notable? Or noteworthy enough for you to actually say that. Sorry, anyway.
No. I was just thinking then as well. At school, was there anyone that you sort of aspired to? Because I seem to recall, I might have this wrong, I'm pretty sure we had no black teachers at our school. We had no teachers of colour, I don't think. I'm just trying to think. Did we?
So we had, he was from Kenya, and he was like, not an Erasmus, but a sort of fill-in teacher, just temporarily as a way of furthering his teaching credentials. They went back to Kenya. And forgive me, and I totally forget his name. Oh, it's going to annoy me. But he did stay in Foley House for a little while.
Right.
But it was only for like a term. But you're absolutely right. There was no black teachers.
Yeah. So, but that's what I mean. So, was there anybody at school? I mean, I'm not saying I aspired to any of the teachers at that school either. But I mean, was there anybody at the school where you were like, yeah, that they're helping me get through this? I call on, I call on them if I need any help or whatever. Was there anyone like that at school?
Not really. I mean, yes and no, because I think when you're in an environment, you don't know any better. So for me, the kindness that was shown to certain tutors would be preferable. Do you know what I mean? I appreciate my housemaster, Mr. Good. You know, he was someone who, if I was in trouble and whatnot, I could confidently go to him and he'll help me out, or I believe so anyway. But insofar as like, oh, know what they're doing and do they have my best interests at heart, I would say 99% of the tutors didn't. And that's how I felt. But regardless, you know, like I said, I was there, I was a full boarder. I was just trying to just get through it.
I remember at school, and I remember I did mention this to you before we had this chat.
Right.
I was about, I think I'd only been at the school. I was like in the first year, I think. So
Right.
my first year there. And I remember, I have a very vivid memory of it, asking you if I could feel your hair. I remember this. I remember doing it. You obliged, actually. You said yes. I remember it really distinctly. And I think back on that now, and it's because I knew I was going to be speaking to you, that memory's just popped back up in my head.
Right.
And I just obviously wouldn't fucking dream of doing that now, ever, because what is the point? And I was asking myself, I was thinking, why did I do that? What was it in me at that point that made me think that that was an appropriate thing to do? And I've put it down to curiosity, right? As a young, naive idiot, just wondering, just curious. And it made me think, if it is that, with the conversations that we're having at the moment about race in particular, are we risking losing that curiosity and replacing it with fear and worry of asking questions, important questions? Now, I'm not talking about going up to black people and saying, can I feel your hair? That's not what I mean. I just mean having the confidence to ask a question where you don't have the fear of being called out for it. I'm asking that very delicately. So
No, I
what's
hear
your answer
that,
to that?
but I guess let me ask you, why does it matter if you're scared? Ask anyway.
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
I suppose for me, I have absolutely no intention of upsetting anyone. And I think if I knew at school at that age that could have potentially upset you, I would have never have done it. Unless I wanted to hurt you because I thought you'd done something stupid to me, in the same way that I would punch someone in the arm.
Right.
But I would have never have done that. And I think now, sort of understanding things a little bit more, I'm not going to say a lot more because I just don't know. The fear is saying something that could just be perceived in the wrong way and would upset and offend somebody. That would be the fear. I mean, I shouldn't feel that way because I'm asking, or I would be asking a genuine question for me to educate myself and be a better person.
Precisely. So do you feel like that would be missed in the question? That you feel like the person, say for instance, you asking me about certain things, do you feel like I wouldn't be able to interpret your sincerity?
That's a good point. No, but that's because I know you.
Okay, no, I get that. I guess maybe this is a slightly unfair sort of question because you and I do have history. I think what I'm trying to get at is everything can be said and should be said, right? But the truth of the matter is you shouldn't expect the person in who you're asking that question to respond accordingly to how you'd want them to respond. They can be offended and they can walk off and they can say, fuck off, do you know what I mean? Or they can say, you do your own research, you do X, Y, Z. And that's absolutely fine. But that you shouldn't center, right, yourself on their experience or the way they feel about being questioned. Do you know what I mean? And if that's the case, and I often say this, like, if someone feels that the fear of not wanting to get it wrong is going to prevent them from educating themselves, then are they really genuine about change? Because
That's a good point.
because nothing has no breakthroughs ever happened within the boundaries of safety or comfort. You have to take risks.
Yeah. Lola's message, she said there's also a difference between asking someone you know and asking in a public forum. Google is also a real and valid option when it comes to learning about cultures. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I think, yes, basically, me feeling uncomfortable about it is probably a good thing because it means I'm sort of forcing myself to confront my own prejudices or preconceptions. Right? Is that right? Have I got that right?
Well, I mean, you tell me. I can't tell you if you've got it right or not.
I'm basically, yeah.
The-
Like, can you tell me? Am I racist? Am I? No. Do you know what? I actually wrote an article and made me feel really uncomfortable. I don't know how you feel about this either, and it made me feel uncomfortable because for exactly the same reason that I explained before. I just the worry of offending people, and I told my friend about it, a white friend about it, and he was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you said that." And I was like, "No, I think you're missing the point." And I'll tell you what I wrote. I basically said that in my mind, right, if I'm walking through a certain part of London and I'm on my own and I see a black guy walking towards me on the street, a part of my brain, a subconscious part of my brain, will go, "Oh no, what's he going to do to me?" Because and he was, when I told him that, he's like, "Oh my god, man, that's fucking horrendous. How can you think that?" And I tried to explain to him, and this is what I tried to explain in the article, and it's why it made me so uncomfortable, is that it's not me thinking that. This is a subconscious thing that is in my mind because of societal racism, right? This is the way that black people, in particular in London, are presented in the media, has ingrained itself so much into my subconscious growing up throughout the years that whenever I see a black person walking on the same side of the street with me, I have to consciously say, "What the fuck are you thinking that for, you fucking idiot? They're fine. They're just another human being trying to get to work or whatever they're doing." And it physically made me feel uncomfortable writing that. Like, it was horrible. And I remember, and you're sort of admitting it to yourself that exists in you. And I think it's really easy to say, "No, I'm not racist," because I'm not going to go out and start being offensive. But there's systemic racism, isn't there? And that's what people don't understand, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think racism exists in all levels, right? Fundamentally, you're absolutely right when it comes down to systematic. God, I can't even get my words out. So we're talking structural, institutional, then we're talking about interpersonal. And then there's a third layer when it comes down to those of color, which is internalized as well. So fundamentally, what you've been consuming all your life, and those who are from the diaspora, so for me, I was born and I've lived there all my life, right? The same thing you're consuming to tell you the dangers of a black man, guess what? That's the same thing I'm consuming as well. But the only difference is that my cousins, my brothers, my friends are me, and we're not a threat. But unfortunately, you don't necessarily have the privilege or the luxury of having that personal experience with others quite as much or with frequency as I do. You know, I wake up, I look in the mirror, I'm a black man. Do I see myself as a danger? Of course not. So when I am walking down the street, I'm literally seeing reflections of myself within my brothers and sisters. And so therefore, my subconscious isn't saying danger. And, and I think to answer your question, right, wouldn't say you're racist, no, but you can't help. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jane Elliott, who's a person who did a social experiment with blue eyes and brown eyes. She fundamentally goes, if you live in the West, right, you consume all the media and you're fairly intelligent and educated. If you aren't racist, then you're either a real idiot or you're a miracle. Do you know?
Right.
And it takes, again, I think we might have said this off record, but it takes everything that you've learned to date. It will take almost as long to unlearn to date. Do you know what I mean? To wherever you find yourself, if you are willing to do that work. You're going to ask me something, Ollie, sorry.
But that means you have to consciously fight your internal systemic hideousness that's been built into you, don't you?
Yeah,
That makes
100%.
you literally convulse. It's horrible.
100%, but just similar to the way that we work out, let's not be around the bush. Running or even doing a marathon, you don't wake up one day and you're able to do a marathon.
But how do using the marathon analogy then, how do we train people up to be like, to change their mindset, to change their prejudices, whatever they may be, across all communities? Like, I mean, how do you...
Okay, using a marathon as an example is first and foremost, do you want to run a marathon? That's the question. That's fundamentally, the crux of the question. Do you want to run a marathon? Some people are very complicit and they enjoy the status quo as is, so they don't want to change, right? So if the question is, yes, I do want to run a marathon, right? Then there is how and what behaviors do people who run marathons exude? Well, they get up, number one, fine, that's a given. They buy equipment, so running shoes, that's a given. They get out their door. These are all small incremental steps that eventually, as you start doing it, you might run your first mile, you might be able to then run your third, your fifth. Eventually, you'll get to a stage where you're able to run a marathon. But it takes work. It's easy, but just because it's easy, or rather it's simple, shall I say, that just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy.
But to do that, if you've got to say to these people then, you run a marathon, you get a sense of achievement, there's a reward at the end of it. What's the benefit in your view? And it seems like an obvious question, but I'm not sure many people could answer it. What's the benefit of a more equal society?
You tell me that, because I'm not the one who needs to answer that at all. I'd actually throw that to you. What is the benefit of a more equal society?
Well, but I suppose that's my point, because I think from a brutally, hideously honest perspective, as a white man, the world is geared up in a way that it's good for me. I have no worry. I step out of the door in the morning, right, and I know, and I don't even need to consciously think this, but I know that nobody is going to discriminate at me because of the colour of my skin. At all. Somebody might say, you've got a ginger beard, you twat. But they're not going to stop me from getting a job because of that. And so, for me, personally, and I guess this is my point, they're potentially, possibly, it wouldn't be beneficial for me to have a more equal society. But I don't want to personally live in a society that isn't equal. Well, I mean, we live in it now. And I don't want to. I don't like that. I hate it. I hate the thought of it.
But why? Because I feel we need to be honest with ourselves. I mean, and I think we literally get into something quite juicy. And actually, I relish this conversation, so thanks all. But I think you're absolutely right. The conversation is those in power, why would they ever want to relinquish power, right? Why would those where this current status quo benefits them, why would they ever want to give that up? What I'm fighting for is definitely not what you're fighting for, because from where I'm sitting, it doesn't seem like you are fighting.
No, arguably I'm not, am I?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sorry, Ellie, go on.
No. I'm just trying to think what me fighting would look like. But you're right. We're not fighting the same battle, are we? Because if I'm fighting for a more equal society, that's because society's not balanced in my favour. Yeah,
exactly.
It's good. And in any other sort of situation, I would always want things to be balanced in my favour, whether it's a bigger slice of cake or slightly more money in a salary. But for this, I feel like it's like starting a running race where you're 10 meters in front. And I think that for me personally, it's like, well, I don't want to achieve, be successful, or do well in a world where actually that's just bollocks. I've faked it. It's not because of who I am in my skill set or what I've learned or how I've developed. It's because I'm white and you're on our team, so it's fine. I don't want to live in a world like that. So for me, that's one of the reasons. But also, I just don't want anybody to have a shitty fucking life. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think those who do talk about social justice in all its, you know, pillars, so we can talk from, ableism to disable, we can talk race, creed, sexual orientation, religion, etc., right? The reason why you want to balance and fairness isn't necessarily because how do I put this in how do I articulate this? I can't speak on behalf of you guys, but I can definitely speak on behalf of me and what it is I'm looking to achieve. I'm hoping at one stage it really, as Martin Luther King said in High Dream, it really doesn't actually matter about the skin, right? It actually matters whether or not I'm an arsehole or not. But it's not because of my skin, right? And there have been plethora of times, and you can date this back throughout history, fundamentally, even from a cultural perspective, in which we have and were rising, to the top, but powers of being structures then were like, no, you're getting too much quote unquote power. So let's actually dismantle that. I can't answer your question. I really can't. I can't answer why you would fight, but I can answer why I would fight. And that's because I fundamentally just want to make sure that I am safe. Me and my brothers and sisters are safe. I want to make sure that I don't have to have any concerns about running down the street with my hoodie up on my local run as an exercise. I'll give you an example. When I'm on a date with this white woman, right? She said she was running. It was an evening run for her. She was wearing a hoodie and she got stopped by the police officer. She pulled down her hood and they went, no, you can go. It's okay. And just that in of itself was so telling to know that actually, well, if she wasn't white and a woman, right, what that interaction would be. And that is a world I don't ever want to live in. Everyone should be fine to run and not feel that their life is in danger. Rest in peace, Aubrey Ahmed.
It's Lola's raised a really interesting point. She said, which that ties in with exactly what you're saying. She says racism also affects white people in a way that patriarchy affects men negatively, despite the power. So she said, do you want to be scared every time you walk by a black man? Is that comfortable for you? And she's absolutely right. So when you talk about you fear walking out of your door because potentially you're going to be discriminated against or the police are going to treat you in a different way or whatever, every day is a bit of a roulette. Do I want to feel that way every time I walk past a black man? No. Does anybody want to, you fear the unknown. Do people want to fear people of a different colour that live on their street? No. So actually, that's absolutely right. That is absolutely a thing to fight for. But I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about curiosity and asking the right questions. And I think a lot of it is driven by just hideous lack of understanding or education. Like, people just do not know, so choose to fear instead because it's easy. So you don't have to learn, do you? Just like me and spiders. I don't want to go near a fucking spider. I ain't going to learn about one either. Fuck them. Can we all look? Can we just agree that spiders are pricks and we just fucking get rid of them? Let's get rid of spiders.
I genuinely have no qualms with spiders. I could pick one up and put it out the window. Happy days.
No, fuck. Good. You can come and get them all out of my hand.
Cool.
Yeah, but it is an interesting point, and I think if anybody was like, well, why would I bother? Why should I bother being interested in the Black Lives Matter movement and that kind of thing? And it's like, well, you want to live in a society where you feel safe, your children feel safe, everybody gets a fair chance at everything, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think so. I think everyone is liberal until you have someone who isn't you live beside you. And I think often the case, a lot of these social causes never actually quote unquote matter until they matter, right? But then isn't that just papering over cracks? Rather, why not actually make sure that this or these sort of issues never arise in the first place by being fully educated, by, you know, having appreciation of humanity and love for one another, right? I think Arthur Schopenhauer says that, he goes, we operate on two emotions, fear or love. And I think predominantly a lot of us operate on fear. We often move in that way. And actually, you'll tend to find that love is so much more nourishing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. It's because it's more difficult, isn't it? It's like, you know,
Well, we
eating
fear what we
vegetables
don't
is
know.
way.
You know, we fear what
Yeah.
What did they say, vegetables?
I was going to say eating vegetables is way more difficult than stuffing your face with a chocolate bar, right? It's just like that's just the reality. That's why, you know, I struggle losing weight, but it's all, you know, also the fact that we've known each other for 20 years. Obviously we haven't seen that much of each other when we've been adults. We both work in podcasting, and here we are on the internet having a conversation that is predominantly about race. And I just think, while it's been fascinating and I've loved it, and I love talking to you about these things, and because I want to understand it better and I want to be better, it just shouldn't be that way, should it? I mean, we should be talking about that hoodie you're wearing. And
But you know what's even funny, right, about the hoodie I'm wearing? I actually always had to second guess whether I should wear this because I didn't want to adhere to the stereotype.
What? Do you know what though? If I was stereotyped in that way, I would play up to it just to fucking do it. Like if I was an Italian chef, I'd be like, "Fuck it, I'm growing one of those tashes, and I'm going to wear that big hat. I don't care. I'm just going to play up to this, so people, and then I'm going to behave completely differently, just in front. Do you know what I mean? I'm being flippant.
I know you are. Of course you are. Of course you are. And I think you've got the luxury to be able to dip your toe in and out. Right. I know you wanted to talk about appropriation stuff. I don't know how we do it for time, but
well, we can talk. We can talk about it. Absolutely.
But I don't know. I don't know whether I've answered your questions. Are you hitting me with any questions that you specifically have that I can help with? Because I don't know if I am helping.
Well, hang on. Look, no, you have. I think. I mean, you hit on something really important there, which is I'm able to just, you know, me being flippant. I can dip my toe into it and leave when I want in the conversation, in the debate, and it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I can go and live my life, and I could go and live the rest of my life and never talk about this ever again. That is the reality. I could do that, but I choose not to, of course. But lots of other people, just the easy way is to not bother, right?
I mean, that's apparent. That's why we're currently in the climate that we're in.
And you mentioned cultural appropriation because I did want to ask you about this, and I suppose that's a really great symbol for dipping your toe in and then leaving again. And I suppose my question was, and it goes back to what we were saying before about curiosity. Is curiosity, being curious about a culture, trying it, maybe, I don't know, I'm going to just pick a random example, wearing a turban, for example, just to see what it's like. Is curiosity, it's different from appropriating, isn't it? I mean, I understand the problem 100% with profiteering through or from somebody else's culture. That's a real problem. I completely understand that. But if somebody wants to immerse themselves in a culture to understand it better because they're curious about it, is that a bad thing?
When you say immerse themselves in a culture, I think I need to almost understand what you mean by that. Because let's say you were to wear a dress, Ollie, right?
Sure, I've done it.
There you go, you're curious, right?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, let's say yes for argument's sake, yeah. I mean, it was for a bit, but yeah.
Okay, so you're poking fun at it.
I was poking fun at it, yeah. As in, I'm a bearded, hideous lady, yeah.
So that in itself can be perceived as problematic, right? But whereby if someone, so the conversation really and truly is simple as this, and I often say to my friend, like my boy, I'm like, if you're sincere in certainly wanting to understand the culture, right, then you give space for that culture and you ensure that when you are there, you're paying respect for. So if you were, say, for instance, appropriating, and I use that in quote marks, and you don't pay respect and where the source comes from, and you're profiteering from it, that's problematic. But there's nothing wrong, and nothing ever exists without some form of recombination of two different things to make something else, right? So nothing's ever truly purist, just by nature of life. And I think what I'm trying to land at is appropriation, from what I get and what I understand it to be. And please, I'm not the spokesperson or the voice for these sort of. There's so many more people, more academic and studious. I can speak from my own experience. What I understand appropriation to be is fundamentally, let's use context: a white woman wearing braids, right? And claiming that she found braids, and all of a sudden every other white woman who follows her and stuff wants to start wearing braids, and not actually understanding that there's historical context to what braids means and the hairstyle and where that comes from, and paying absolutely no respect to it whatsoever. That's appropriation, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, because I was actually, because I was going to ask you. I saw a post from this girl who was wearing oh god, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a traditional Indian dress, and somebody had shared it and basically said, look, you can't do this, you're appropriating this traditional Indian dress. And I was thinking, and all the comments were of the same ilk, and I was thinking, oh, that's interesting, what's the appropriation? And I think you've hit it on the head, which is, there was absolutely no reference to historical context or where that came from, the style, anything like that. And there was no respect for that culture. It was literally just being pumped out as a fashion statement for likes, basically. That's essentially what it was.
And that's it. That's it. And I think a lot of everything in which we are even talking about fundamentally just boils down to respect and seeing each other as equals, eye to eye. I mean, like, I've got one of my best friends, I gave him a native Agbada from Nigeria, and he absolutely loves it. It's comfortable, he wears it, and he wears it in the house. Now, I haven't actually asked him whether or not he's worn it outdoors, but I suspect if he did, he certainly would get asked, a lot of questions and comments. And then I'm assuming he will therefore tell the legacy and the history as in, oh, my friend who's genuinely Nigerian, Yoruba, he gave this to me because he knew I liked the aesthetics of it. But he's not ever going to pretend, oh, no, that he was the one that sourced it, he made it, this, that, and the other, because then that's him fundamentally taking credit for something that he has. There's no, he's taking credit for something that isn't fundamentally his in that sense.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating, isn't it? I just, you mentioned Nigeria there. Actually, before we go, because I didn't want to, I didn't mention it to you, but your family are from Nigeria, right? You were born in Britain.
Yeah, I was.
Do you have Nigerian nationality? Did they give you a passport? Is that how it works?
So I've got a Nigerian passport as well. Yeah.
How often do you go back there?
So I went there in 2018 for a month and a little bit.
Yeah.
But I actually did that specifically as, just to touch base on my roots once again. And also I needed to speak to my estranged father.
Oh, right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
In a good way? You don't have to go into detail on this.
No, I don't absolutely mind. Funny enough, I actually did. I recorded everything, so it was almost a documentary thing. And the pitch was I became one of the 5 finalists for Wickers Awards 2019.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a simple case of fundamentally going back, knowing where I come from, and speaking to my dad and asking him where he's been.
How did it go? I mean, were you what happened though? So when you say straight, I mean, how old were you when he left?
So, like, he's never lived with us. I mean, I'm 34 years old, so I've not known him for 34 years, in a sense. I mean, admittedly, I do know because of images, and there was a brief stint when we used to go to Nigeria from the age of 3 to 5, but that's about it.
That's really sad. Were you angry at him?
Nah, far from. You just need to understand, like, and I think because for me, it's too easy for me to paint my culture, my tradition, which is quite westernized in truth, with that of someone who's lived and born in Nigeria through and through. So it's just a case of having that conversation and understanding his story, right?
Can't imagine being in that situation. When you go back to Nigeria, do you feel, because you're, like you say, you're British, but you spent most of your life here. So do you feel like when you go back, do you feel out of place? Do things feel different? Does it feel like home, or does it feel like home?
So, do you know what's really crazy? And this is something I often say to any of my friends, right? There is nothing like being in a country where you're the majority. And I mean that like racially. So when I'm in Nigeria, I definitely feel like home. But unfortunately, when I talk and then when I have certain behaviors, it's almost like the ruse has just almost been pulled over, right? They're like,
yeah, sure.
He's not.
They know
local.
Immediately, yeah.
And I laughed with my friends. Yeah, I go, we always need to go on holiday to a predominantly black country because this is what white people must feel like. Just like, everything's good, everything's blessed, and they actually think I'm cool or not because of my race.
Well, this is the thing, right? As a white person, my only experience of being sort of picked out because of my colour is I went to Cambodia, and because I was white, you literally, everybody's just like wants to talk to you straight away. But the difference is they think you're fucking amazing. They like, sure, they want you to buy a scarf, but they think you're amazing. And there's never any sort of malice there. Do you know what I mean? And I was thinking about this actually before talking to you, because you just, I've been fortunate enough to travel all over the world, and I've just never had, regardless of what country I'm in, regardless of the population and the rate, whatever, I've never felt like I've been discriminated against at all. So it's more than just, when you talk about white privilege, being a white person in a white country, it's being a white person. You're sort of treated differently. And that's 100%, mad.
100%. I mean, again, you could base this on history, right? And British imperialism and colonialism and the likes of, right, the British Empire. But I think what you would tend is if you could actually speak the local dialect, what they will say isn't necessarily...
Sure, yeah, they're probably calling you a prick.
Precisely, but they know you've got some pounds on you.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's true.
In the capitalist world, genuinely, unfortunately, money can or tends to speak louder than any other form. And there's that's fundamentally it in truth.
Well, look, I'm going to end it there because I actually would love to get you back on again. I told you this. I'm stopping these until September. But I want to get you back on and have just conversations about other things. And also, we can see if the world has changed in 2-3 months' time.
In 2-3 months. I wish. Yeah. I wish.
Yeah, just literally hundreds of years worth of history just changes in 2 months. We'll come back and be like, fucking hell, everything's fine. It's all fixed.
Yeah.
It's
everyone's
done.
allowed to touch everyone's hair. It's all good.
Yeah. Tommy Robinson was just down at that Black Lives Matter thing the other day. He was handing out cake. Fuck. Yeah.
He was doing the Wakanda sign.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. People can change, but that's one of the few that I expect probably won't.
Yeah. We're barely scratching the surface, and I think, in truth, Ollie, albeit, I definitely would always love to have a conversation with you on record or off record, regardless. If you always have anything, so ask me, a friend first and foremost. But do get other voices, because I can't speak for, likewise, you can't speak for all white men, I can't speak for the entire black, it's
what are you talking about? What do you mean you can't talk for the entire black community?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, fucking hell.
I know.
Oh, why did I bother getting you on?
I'm sorry.
I don't.
You only got me on because I'm the only black friend.
Yeah, yeah. That's the only reason. Good one, thanks. My only black friend who is also a fellow podcaster.
How do you sleep at night?
I know, dreadful, isn't it?
Yeah,
Fucking
silk pillows, eh? With
I
white
wish I had
privilege tears.
I can speak for all white people when I say we basically all sleep in Egyptian cotton,
300 thread
beds,
count.
linen. Yeah, it's just that's all we sleep in. So how do we sleep at night? Just really well.
I see that.
Look, no, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much, and I will speak to you very, very soon. So
thanks everyone who joined in. Lola, I think she sounds like an amazing person, and she probably has a lot to contribute. You should get her on, possibly.
Yeah, Lola, hit me up. I'd love to get you on. Let's have a conversation. You've got lots of interesting points. Thanks, Ade. Take it easy, man.
Have a good time.
Cheers, dude.
Take
Bye.
care.
See you soon. Bye. That's Ade. Absolute pleasure talking to him, as usual. He's such a lovely, lovely chap. I can't wait to speak to him again. Thank you so much for watching. Absolute pleasure having you all along. And like I say, I will be back in September for a new revised version of this format. It won't be exactly the same as this, where we'll be talking to lots more interesting people. If you've got any suggestions, head over to olliepeart.com, get them in, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Bye!
Hera, Hermes, Icarus, Narcissus, Medusa, Ephasos,